So this video is how to socialize, right? I'm making this video for mostly people in high school or people in middle school, or even adults, young adults that suffer with social anxiety and lack social skills and lack social cues or blind to social cues and for people that don't understand socializing, right? I was always someone who I've just always been an anxious person. I've always suffered from anxiety, right? And so social anxiety, is part of all of anxiety, right? So, you know, I can remember all the way, not even just high school, but middle school, elementary school. Like from my earliest memories, I remember being anxious to talk to people. Not even just pretty girls I was attracted to. I wouldn't even, I would look at them like, oh, they're beautiful, but I wouldn't even I couldn't even talk to them. If they were to come talk to me, it was just like I would have like a nervous breakdown, like literally, it's like I'm locking up and freezing, right? Because that's how bad my anxiety was, right? And just from being nervous, talking to pretty women, which is natural, and every guy or straight guy kind of has to deal with that. But I'm talking about the more, no, I don't even want to say unnatural, but the more like just social anxiety of just having a normal conversation with someone, right? Um, it just becomes this like overthinking, this over analyzing, this um, it's like it's becomes uncomfortable, and you can have conversations with your family or your friends, right? When it comes to talking to strangers, and I kind of have like a little um, a drawing or sketch or whatever up here, kind of goes along with what I'm saying, and I'll talk about this in a second and kind of like erase it a little bit, but um, when you have stranger talk is the same thing as small talk. You have this, there is this conversations can be breaking down. Okay, I'll use this, right? Your conversations with people can be breaking down into stranger talk, acquaintance talk, friends talk, and family talk, right? Stranger talk is how you talk to every single stranger, right? And this is how you develop social skills. These are your outside personality. This is what is perceived. Your stranger talk or your small talk or whatever you want to call it. That is what's perceived by everybody that you talk to, or your first impression. Every stranger you talk to, right? And a lot of us, since middle school or high school, we haven't developed that stranger talk, and we don't understand stranger talk, right? But stranger talk is very simple. I used to, like I said, my social anxiety was so bad that I used to overanalyze, overthink everything, right? I would memorize formulas of conversations. I would overhear or eavesdrop other people's conversations and try to mimic that and copy that, right? But it was fake, almost unnatural, the way I was doing it, right? Because I didn't understand how to have a natural conversation. And so I would memorize, oh, hey, ask people how their day is, right? Even if you don't, I would ask people, hey, how's your day going? You doing all right? But I would say that and not mean it. But now when I ask it, I mean it, right? I genuinely do mean it. Like, and you can hear it in my tone, which is, and I'll talk about tonality and all of that stuff in a second. But back then, I would just repeat a script so that people would think I'm normal. And it's just like, there's always this fear of like, when people talk to me, they'll see my anxiety, they'll see that something's wrong with me. And that fear, I didn't want people to see that in me, right? And what that did was kind of turn me into a robot in a way, right? Because I would show no emotion, I would speak with no emotion, and I would just be repeating a script. Because the reason why I wouldn't show no emotions, because a long time ago when I was bullied and stuff, I learned a trick in my mind. If I show no emotion, then nobody knows I'm hurting. So if somebody's saying some hurtful things to me, if I show no emotion, then they would think that it didn't hurt me, right? And yeah, I don't remember when I developed that, but I know that that belief system, or not even belief system, but I still kind of do it today, but that habit of showing no emotion, being monotone, just have a poker face, right? That was holding me back a lot, because When people can't hear your emotion, when people can't see your emotion, you're it's I don't know how to describe it, but it creates a lot of awkward conversations, a lot of awkward interactions, and people view you differently, right? And so it's so funny, right? Because the mindset I had was I want everyone to think that I'm like everyone else. I want everyone to think I'm normal. But I was by doing this poker face, by showing no emotion, by doing all these things and repeating these scripts and stuff like that, I was becoming like a robot or not normal or not human. I was becoming I don't know what the word is, but off. People would say you're off, something's off about you, but I can't put my finger on it, right? And that's what it was though. Yeah, I didn't really make that connection, and you know, people, a lot of times people won't really say what they're truly thinking, about how they feel about you, and so a lot of times people will keep their opinions to themselves because, it kind of sucks that we're not more open with our opinions. I wish we were, but so I don't want me to close my arms off, but um, yeah, nobody, I had a few people told me about this, but I just thought, oh, I guess that's just who I am, right? It's just, oh, a quirky part of me. But no, I would consider it a bad trait because what I really wanted was just to be normal and have normal conversations. I want to be able to have normal conversations. How do you socialize the right way, the natural way, like everyone else does it? I shouldn't have to repeat a mental script. I shouldn't have to um, show no emotion to hide my anxiety and my whatever hurt emotions I'm feeling inside, right? And so that was how I socialized for a very long time, and I just got comfortable talking to myself, and I love talking to myself, and one day I made a decision. You know what? This is gonna bother me if I don't learn how to socialize the right way. It's going to bother me. Like I just I couldn't live the rest of my life not knowing social skills. I needed to learn it. And what I did is what I discovered is I stopped thinking about it and I learned to socialize. When I stopped overthinking it and trying to find the perfect formula of socializing which works on every single person. Once I stopped doing that, I became a people person. Like now, people are telling me that I'm a people person. They see me as an extrovert, which is so crazy to me because I've never been an extrovert my entire life. I've always been introverted because I've just embarrassed myself so much socially that I just gave up and I just wanted to get by or get away. I just wanted to be the quiet kid. And if you were to talk to me, I would have my mental script ready. And every conversation, I'd be trying to get out of the conversation as fast as possible, right? That was my conversations. I'm trying to get out of this conversation as fast as possible, right? But what I ended up doing was stop thinking. And I learned how to calm my anxiety. When I realized it's not just social anxiety, I am an anxious person in general. And I know it's not good to identify with anxiety because it is a temporary emotion. But when you get anxious with every single thing, like anxious with your health, anxious about death, anxious about money, anxious about socializing, anxious about, you get anxiety about so many different things. You have to kind of ask yourself, hey, am I an anxious person? Or is this like a normal thing that I'm experiencing that's temporary, whatever, right? And so once I identified my anxiety, I started addressing it and I started doing meditation. One of the main reasons why I do meditation is for anxiety to have a calmer mood, right? My anxiety is kind of rising a little bit and I can feel it, but it's kind of why I'm speaking fast. But I'm speaking low right now because I have a roommate and don't want to be too loud. But what was I talking about? Socializing. I identified with anxiety, and when I said, hey, I'm an anxious person, I'm someone that can get very anxious easy, right? But I don't want that to come up in conversations. So I need to learn how to be more calm, right? And so I started meditation, started getting a handle on my anxiety, and I realized I have anxiety because of things that could go wrong that I didn't take care of, right? Like, oh, it would be like, oh, I need to clean my room, and I'll get a little anxiety about that because my room is dirty, or I need to pay off that court ticket that, I've been avoiding, whatever. Like, it would be just things that I'm avoiding or running from that create anxiety, right? And once I took care of all that stuff, my anxiety went down. I still experience anxiety. Anxiety is still part of me. I think I'll experience it for the rest of my life, but I'm confident in myself to be able to regulate it and be able to ride it out, if that makes sense, or be comfortable with it because I've experienced it so much. Like, I don't even freak out anymore. And sometimes it's hard for me to tell when I have anxiety and when I have regular thoughts, because I became so comfortable with my anxiety that I believe that they are regular thoughts that I'm, regularly thinking. And I don't even know if that makes sense. But like, when you get to my point of, anxiety and stuff like that, anxiety just becomes your normal thinking. At first it's kind of like a panic, like freaking out, and then it becomes like, oh my God, I'm having anxiety right now. I didn't even realize. Like, it becomes like to that point. And but no, I'm sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. But yeah, so once I stopped overthinking it, I said, you know what, I'm not gonna think about it anymore. And I realized something. Okay, so when someone, this is a bad transition, right? But here is what I would do in my mind. I'll explain what I do in my mind that would create social anxiety, right? Someone say something to me, right? And what they say, I would have an emotional response, right? There will be, based off of what they said to me, there will be an emotional response in my head, right? Ready to say, right? Immediately. What they say activated some emotions inside of me, right? And I can feel them in my mind. And it is up to me to communicate those emotions that came up based off of what they said. And then and the same thing happens to them, right? So they'll say something to me, I'll get an emotional response to what they said, and I'll communicate that emotional response, and then they'll get an emotional response to what I said, and then they'll communicate their emotional response. And then it would just be this back and forth of like, you say something that activated some emotions inside of me, then I say those emotions, and then based off of me communicating those emotions, it activated some emotions in them, and then they communicate their emotions, and it just becomes this like flow of conversation, right? And what ends up happening is you do that until the flow stops, right? And then there'll be like another thing of like, I would always be trying to keep this flow going, just keep it going, right? That would be like an anxiety. Like, it would be like a challenge to keep how many flows I could keep going, or how long I could keep it going. But I had to realize, if the conversation naturally comes to a stop, right? One or two things, right? Either one of the parties of the conversation, one of the participants in the conversation is tired and they don't have much energy to add, or y'all's personalities aren't really a combination, and so you'll have some people that you could probably say hey to, or hey, how's your day going, and then leave it at that, right? They don't really make it to that acquaintance level, right? And this is where I'm gonna talk about this in a second. But that stranger talk is very simple. Is you say hey to someone, and if you're meeting someone for the first time, you exchange, hey, my name is Christian, blah blah. Especially if it's in a work environment, you introduce yourself. Hey, my name is Christian. I just started working in this department, this meat department, whatever. And yeah, blah blah. And then you go from there. You communicate that, and then based off of what you say, they're gonna probably have some emotional response. Sometimes they'll have an awkward response, and then when they have an awkward response, it kind of creates an awkward response in you. And so what you do in that moment though is you just end the conversation. Well, that's actually another video about how to have awkward conversations. A lot of times that awkward energy can just be so uncomfortable, so we just walk away, right? But I do want to make a video on how to deal with awkwardness. Now, I kind of already did a long time ago, probably over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago, but I do want to make an update video of that. But no, so basically it's like this, right? Someone says something to you, right? And this is kind of what happened to me, right? I just became the quiet person again, right? I became the quiet person, and then when someone talks to me, think about this, right? When someone says something to me like, hey, how's your day going? I have, sometimes there might not be anything. I'll just be like, hey, my good day's going all right. Or maybe something did happen to me, right? And I could talk about that. And, you might be like, oh, they don't really care, but they do, because it is a conversation, and it's like, it's supposed to be a conversation starter. And it's not just one of those things where you say to be nice, which is what I did, right? When someone say, "Hey, how's your day going?" Like for me, I'll talk about yesterday, because yesterday kind of still uh, splashes over into today. Like, okay, I'll explain. So like, when I went to the hospital because of my breathing, that was at nighttime, right? And so I could be like, "Oh yeah, like last night, I went to the hospital because I thought I had breathing issues, but then they told me it was just anxiety." And yeah, so I'm gonna try to get some anxiety medication, and that's just something that happened to me, and I'm just talking about it because it's still on my mind. And this is kind of like the process of venting too. So I'm actually in this process of me talking about my day, or certain events that happen that have some kind of emotional weight to them, that can release the emotional weight just by talking to them. And so, not just trauma dumping. We're not talking about trauma dumping. You try to dump all your problems on someone, right? No. You could be like, try to think of an example, right? Um, nothing really comes to mind, but you just talk about certain events, like or like a movie that you watch, right? And you could recommend them the movie, and you could tell them why you enjoyed it so much. And that's another thing, right? Communicating the things that you enjoy in life. A lot of people, when you share your enjoyment for something that you have in life, right, and you're communicating that enjoyment, what that can do is inspire that person, and you can get that person to enjoy whatever you're talking about, whatever you find enjoyable, just as much as, like, you can get them to enjoy it just as much as you do, right? Just by expressing that enjoyment with your tone. When you enjoy something, think about like a kid, right? When they enjoy like a video game or a movie, you can hear it in their tone how much they enjoyed it, right? And then them talking about it so much, like you could watch the same movie with someone, right? And you're like, "Oh, that's a alright movie." And then after that movie, the person that you watched it with can enjoy it so much, where they're just so passionate about it, and them talking about it gets you kind of passionate about it, enjoyed it, and you kind of enjoy it more. You kind of experience that enjoyment that they did because they're sharing it. And so it's kind of like spreading love in a way. I don't know, a lot of people don't like to use that word, but that's kind of what it is. But sorry, I don't know why I do that, but yeah. So the whole thing of what I'm saying, right, is if you're someone that has a lot of social anxiety and you overthink a lot, become the quiet person. Because when you become the quiet person, everyone wants to talk to you first of all, because you're quiet and you're a mystery. And because quietness is a mystery, is there's something like they and what will happen is okay, yeah, let me get back to this, right? So you become the quiet person. When you become the quiet person, people will talk to you, and they'll ask you about how your day is. And usually how I do it is, whatever the first thing comes up in my mind, I communicate it, because what will end up happening is, okay, another thing too. So if someone says something to you and they ask you a question, right? And the first emotional response that you get, if you don't like that emotional response, if that is something that you don't like, then you have to consciously and logically create another response. And that other response that you just created because you didn't like the emotional response that that originally came up, which is how you truly felt from what they said, and which is goes into honesty too, of being an honest person. You logically creating another response creates an awkward conversation, because you avoided your true feelings based from what they said to you, and you didn't communicate them right. And since you didn't communicate them right, you had to logically create another response that would have satisfied them, but no other response would have satisfied them more than your emotional response. And what that can do, at least in my experience, when you create a logical response, it can end the conversation right there, or it'll create an awkward energy between you and that person. And yeah, my best advice is just always communicate the first emotional response you have. Now, you might not like the first emotional response you have, and if it's something very bad, like, and it all depends on what you would consider a bad response, right? That could be another process of anxiety, and be like, oh, is this Is this okay to say? Blah, blah. But you kind of need to have that filter in your mind anyway for a lot of people so that you don't say the wrong things. You kind of like, I like what Jordan Peterson said, right? You have to feel your words before you say them. Like in your head, you kind of need to play it out a little bit. Like so that's kind of deep, right? I'm going a little deep right there. And I'm not going to go, I'm trying to keep this video simple, right? When someone says something to you, it activates some emotions in you, right? And based off of that emotional response, you communicate that, and then you can ping pong conversation. Okay? Now, like I said before, I don't recommend you trying to create a logical response that would satisfy them or get you away in that conversation from not communicating your true feelings, because you won't get away with it. It's gonna show in some way. It's gonna manifest in some way. But what I will say is this, right? Always try to communicate your first emotional response. And maybe you don't even have anything to say, right? And in those moments, if you don't have anything to say based off what someone says to you, you could literally say, well, I don't really have anything to add to that, or I don't have anything to say, or no words. Like those type of responses. Or think about this, right? You know how I said, when someone says something to you, you communicate the first emotional response that you get based off what they said, right? And that first emotional response could be, I don't feel like talking. That is an emotion right there. I'm not in the mood to talk, right? That is an emotion right there. That is an emotional response. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, I can't tell them I'm in the mood to talk because that's rude. And so I create the logical, awkward response that ends the conversation. And then creates awkward energy, right? But what I do now, because I'm trying to be an honest person, I'm trying to align myself with honesty, right? That's one of my values or virtues or whatever. I think everyone should, but everyone lives their life how they want. But yeah, if you're not in the mood to talk, you just say it. Just say, hey, I don't feel like talking right now. I'm just not in the mood. That's all you gotta say. And a lot of people do this naturally and they don't even think about it, right? But a lot of people, they're like, I can't be rude. I don't want them to think that, blah, blah. But people understand if you're not in the mood to talk, because everyone has been there at some point where they're not in the mood to talk. And so that's all you have to communicate. And yeah, that is pretty much it. I'm trying to think of like what else I can add to it, but to sum it up, I wouldn't say you need to be a conversation starter, right? Unless you're like an extrovert and you're normally good at socializing, then this video isn't even for you. This video is mostly for introverts, mostly people in high school, mostly people dealing with social anxiety. I would say just focus on the first emotional response. It's literally like this, right? And it only stays in your mind for a few seconds. So in that few second window, you have the chance to communicate it. And if you wait too long, then it leaves your mind and you can't communicate it. And then you're in an awkward conversation again. And so it's really like if you don't communicate that first emotional response that you get from someone, right? And that's how you get a fast conversation, like a podcast, right? And that's how you keep the conversation flowing. It's because, like I said, you say something to me, I have an emotional response from what you say, I communicate that emotional response. You have an emotional response to what I just said, and you communicate that, and then I'm back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, until it actually ends. But trying to think of what else I was gonna say. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. And if you don't communicate it in that little window, right? You have like a little 3-second window. I think it's less than that too. Like I'm not sure because I don't think about it in the moment. Because if I try to think about it too long, then I lose that first emotional response that I originally had. And it's not about liking it or whatever. You really cannot control what your first emotional response is. Whatever that is whatever it is, and it's truth. It's honesty, and it's up to you to communicate it. And like I said, if you're in a situation where you just don't want to communicate that because it will bring so much trouble, you just don't communicate nothing at all, and you just naturally let the conversation end. Just say I have nothing to add, just in it like that, right? And so, in terms of figuring out a formula for the perfect conversation, right, that would be the formula, because it's like, that would work for every single person, or it does work for every single person. It has worked for me, and I haven't, like I said, I haven't been thinking about it anymore. I just immediately, and there'll be some times where I'll say the wrong things, but they are truly how I feel, and you know, in those moments when I do, you need to make up with the person and just be like, yeah, I'm so sorry, you know, blah blah. But it's all about being honest with your emotions. That's really what it comes down to. Because people that suffer with social anxiety and people that struggle with, you know, and deal with, like, have to experience awkward conversations a lot, that all comes from you not being honest. It really does. And so the moral, the value, or to sum it all up, just be honest with your emotions. And that's pretty much it. Or anxiety, think about it like this. If you do have anxiety and you do kind of like have a nervousness, communicate that. Say, I have social anxiety. That is communicating an emotion. So that is still honesty. So it's all about being honest, really. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the video. Yeah, I'll see you on the next one.